what's up, guys? Back here with the Deadpool's Theory. Got a fun one for you today. Tossing up ideas for things we wanted to do. When we first started, we were like, let's just chart down a bunch of ideas of things that we think would be a cool discussion, a cool thing to talk about. In the end, I guess the concept of our show, I guess to a degree, is the theory of how we believe, I guess.
Yeah, that was hard. Damn.
The theory of how we believe.
God, we didn't sound pretentious and douchey right there at all.
I mean, everyone's got their own theory of.
I guess we're just we're making the word theory because we like that word more than opinion. Yeah. So it's just our opinion and our theory on it.
The Deadpool's opinion.
That sounds fucking gay.
Yeah, that sounds like some fucking pussy stuff.
Yeah, dude.
All right.
We ain't about that pussy life.
Look at him. Look how hard his tats are and his Pantera shirt is. Before this video started, he told me I looked like a jarhead asshole for wearing this green t-shirt.
I don't think asshole came out. I just meant because it might contrast with our green screen.
Oh, wow. Thanks for giving away kayfabe, bro.
Oh, shit, you're right. God damn it. These pictures are just behind us, changing all the time.
Yeah.
Ever evolving.
Green screen life.
That's right.
So, with this, we decided to do, if you could live in any time period in history, where would you go? Where would you live? What would you do? Blah, blah, blah. So, I should have just, because it wouldn't have made any sense, but I should have said, where would you go in the future? Because you don't even know,
Yeah,
you could have just been like,
true. 3174.
When we're on Mars. Take a wild
Everybody's
guess.
flying around in jetpacks and shit.
So, tossed up a couple ideas. Thought of a couple places that would be cool a time period to live in. I know... I don't know the full history of some of these places and how it is really to live, just from history books in general, and how important they were to time in time, I guess, in the world. They'd be intriguing to live and see how it really was. So I will let you roll first.
Okay, I thought of this way more analytically. So I thought of this as like, okay, obviously we're taking in consideration, obviously we wouldn't leave our family and friends. We wouldn't do any of this or that. So we would think it's like, okay, if I had to go back to a certain time or certain year or something like that with what I already have in mind and my likes and my needs as a human to live and thrive. So this is probably going to be way off of what... We don't know each other's, by the way.
Wow, taking it literal, huh?
Well, But listen, if I had to go there, I wouldn't want to go back to a time where literally they're like, the only medicine was like, we're going to cut your fucking leg off. Sorry, like kind of a deal. Yeah. So I would go back and, like I said, bring in my likes and interests and things like that. I would be born or reborn. Well, go for it.
No, I'm waiting. I think I'm going to guess it, but go ahead.
Well, I want you to guess first.
I was going to say the 80s.
That is the time period that is which I'm going to grow up in.
Oh,
so
yeah, I knew that shit.
I'm going to say I would be born in like the mid to late 70s. So I would be born in like 76, 77, around that time period. Reason being, obviously, like I said, it would be cool to go back to a historical time period. You could go back and see when like the fucking pyramids were built, or go back to a time period when like, the Constitution time period, or like the all these different crazy fucking time period. Go back when the Titanic was around and all this shit or whatever, back when like something first started or whatever. But I thought about it, I was like, well, it would be cool for like, a couple years or a year or so until it got to the point, because we didn't really like say like, okay, you're going back with a mentality of where you came from or what you were used to, but you kind of do that regardless in your head, because when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, well, that'd be cool to go back and see, like the pyramids be built, but I would have to live in that time period. Like I would have to live from whatever to whatever, and my life expectancy would be hella shorter than it would be, the care of your body and state of your physical being would be a hell of a lot worse. But yes, it would be cool to live through that time period, a historical relevance and things like that with the world. But then I thought about it, I was like, that's not what I would do. I would go back to a time period that would fit me for my likes and interests, that would fit me for who I am now, and the, like I said, the things that I enjoy the most. So obviously it's like 4 or 5 big things that I took into consideration. It was obviously music, wrestling, movies and TV, and sports. So another thing that you go back into that time period, you do have some of those things. You could go back to a time period where there's, music and things like that. But a lot of those other things, and as far as like technology goes, we talk a lot about how, technology is bad for us and things like that, and some of the ideas. But there are some things that it's really, really good for. Boredom. Like, you go back to some of these time periods, you're literally sitting there like fucking knocking a ball around. And I mean, yes, at the time they thought it was cool, but here's the thing, and the big thing that I thought about. If you go back to that time period and you told everybody like, hey, you could come here and live in air conditioning and sit on a couch and not have an ability to fucking die in like the first 30 years of your life, and you have all this endless bounds of entertainment. Like, just go put a television in front of somebody from like the fucking 1700s. That would blow their mind. They'd be like, wait, this is a live broadcast from somewhere else on the planet? Like, what? That's insane. Yeah. Like, it would blow people's minds. And that's what I always come back to is like, people always say like, oh, it's such a simpler life, it's just this and that. I'm like, bullshit. Because if you took those people from that time period and put them into this current time period, they'd be blown away. The reason that those things came to be is because they wanted to cure their curiosity and wanted to cure boredom or needs for entertainment or things like that. Yes, has it gotten to a point to where it's a little ridiculous with some things social media-wise? But if you look at the core basis of things like television, movies, film, and cinema, and all these other endless things of entertainment that we get to sit and watch a football game on our couch. We don't have to actually go to the game to see it. We could sit and watch every single fucking game that I want to watch on my couch at home. Like, if you brought that to if those people you brought to now, they would be like, fuck that. I don't want to go back there and get fucking AIDS or get fucking like, some thing in my arm, and they have to end up cutting it off because they don't have the medicines and things like that. But yeah, so I'll elaborate more on the other reasons and things like that, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and explain.
So, I mean, not knowing what you know now, where would you go? Would that still be the same? If you were like,
it's just hard to think that way because you do know what you know now.
I even knowing what I know now, I think that I would go back to. You're gonna be like, what?
No, I knew going into this, I was going to think of it analytically, and you were going to think of it like going to some place that's more elaborate or something. But that's
I would say I would want to live somewhere between 400 and 500 BC in Athens, Greece.
Okay.
I think that was when a period of time where it was the beginning of philosophy, poetry, art.
True.
Government. Just a lot of wild stuff was going on. It was the beginning of a lot of new things that are still prevalent today. I think more than anything, I would just want to see like how they came up with these ideas or how they played them out. I still think that if I knew, I think it would be interesting to go back, maybe put a boundary on it. If I know what I know now, go back and live then, I could know what to avoid, obviously. But I think that seeing for yourself what really happened instead of what was said in the history books, I think that's a little...
That's true.
It's an interesting concept because between that time, that was, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, those guys... were prevalent philosophers about the world, trying to figure out what God was or what your thoughts were, and art was very important, and people were making sculptures and paintings, and everything was just. It feels like it was maybe movies and TV make it a little more exciting than it probably is, but to me, if I knew. If I knew what I know now, I would go back then and I'd just be like, just suck everything in. Just take everything in and just be like, okay, this is how things were and this is how things would be. And then get to an idea where now we know what we know now, and see how they came to the conclusion of what they tried to figure out at that point.
Right.
Because at that time there was no Jesus Christ, there was no, none of that stuff. It was going into that period of time before all of that happened, and that was when people were trying to think, what's going on. They were controlled by the gods. They thought their emotions were God of anger, God of sadness, and they had gods for everything, and they thought humans were the playthings of the gods. So just being around a bunch of people who thought that they were being controlled by gods of emotions and
But
stuff.
would you not be in that same aspect though? Because we didn't, like I said, we didn't set the rules how they would be. You're thinking Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure type of deal, where it's I'm going back to here. I physically would grow up into becoming who I am, just at an earlier time period, to be able to experience more at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't even have to be okay, I know what's going to happen. It'll just evolve and happen.
Right.
And I just live through that time period, and then I just become who I am just 20 years earlier.
If that's the
or
case,
you know what I mean? Because it's I feel like it's if I am just thrown in there and it's okay, cool, and I get to spend a cup of coffee at this time period, I probably would change what it is just to see what it was like.
Right.
And be okay, you get to spend a day here and then come back. I would go back to see if all this shit is real. I would go back to see, okay, was this shit that we talk about and how life has all come to be, which if you guys want to go check out our religion talk and all that kind of stuff, check out our last video. But that would be an interesting thing. Obviously, to go back and be come back and be well, it was all bullshit, or well, I don't know, I guess we were wrong, or you know what I mean?
Right.
To be able to do that, or in different, there's tons of different time periods.
I guess it just depends on if you could go back. I guess if we decided on if you could go back and be raised in a period of time.
Because that's how I took it,
yeah. Or just go back in a period of time to just see what it's like. If it was to just see what it would be like, it would be Athens, Greece.
Okay,
if not, I have another place I would go to.
Let's go that route, because I want to hear what that is. So you would be born with no previous knowledge except for what you have now, and you would literally grow up and evolve into that time period.
I think being raised in the 50s through the 50s through the 50s through the 70s.
Okay.
I think that'd be pretty interesting, seeing the transformation of the world in the 60s would be pretty wild.
Right.
But not at the same time. I think the importance of the family, being mother, father, wholesome picket fence family. I think that'd be interesting to live.
Easier way of living.
Easier way of living. Right. More family time. Just the beginning of new things happening. And seeing where, and that gives you the launch pad from the 50s going into where we are now. You could still possibly be alive and see all of that stuff evolve.
True.
So,
and that was my big thing as far as concerning because at this point, if I was born say 78, 77 or whatever, I would just be turning 40? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that.
No, yeah. So if it was 78 this year, I would be just turning 40. So you're talking, because I couldn't look into it, and like we said, growing up through that era and taking into consideration all of my interests and things like that going into it, I would be basically around 10 years old, around 1988. So a lot of my favorite musical acts and things like that, as far as 80s bands and things like that, would be coming into fruition. And then growing up all throughout the 90s as a teenager would be hella interesting.
Yeah.
I think that'd be crazy, because we were both born in 1990. We're both 90s babies, but being actually to evolve into a man through that time period, evolve into being a legit adult through that time period would be hella interesting. And it was a lot easier way of living. We didn't have to deal with all the craziness and shit. I mean, obviously, we would still deal with it now because we would be alive around that time period.
Yeah.
If you were born in the 50s or 60s or whatever, you would
it started
probably
getting
still be too.
wild in the 90s.
Yeah.
I think that's when you see a transition of things start to happen in the 90s, where things started getting kind of wild. But there's a lot of crazy.
How long can you remember back as far as really having a vivid memory of there forward? I think I have a good recollection of what age I was at.
I would probably say
not little fragments, you from there on you remember.
8.
Really?
Yeah.
I was gonna say like 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Like as far as like remembering back, like okay there, and then that month I did that, and then that month I did that. I think it's around like that 10, around 8, 9, 10, 11, probably somewhere around there.
I guess at 8 it kind of started. It was fragmenty to where I was, like, I guess probably really probably at 2000.
Yeah. So
From,
yeah, we're talking like around when we were around like 10 or 11, around that time period.
That's crazy that we were just children in the 90s, and then we really only started to understand the world when we were 10.
And it's
which
crazy.
is the beginning of the 21st century, which is crazy. And how
many big things happened around that time? You had 9/11. Like we were kids.
11,
we couldn't register that.
Yeah,
like in my time period, I would be like 23, 22 years old to live that as an adult and really grasp that. As like if something like that happened nowadays, we would be like, holy shit. But like at that time period, you're just like, well, what happened, Mom? Like, what's going on? What is happening? Yeah. And I vividly remember like standing and holding on to my, like I knew something serious happened. Mm-hmm. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm like hella interested in like 9/11. I think it's like just it's crazy, dude. Like all the stuff that's happened, like conspiracy wise, and people talking about different stuff, whether it was real or not, or just how insanely massive that event was. But to be able to like live through that time period, like is crazy, and then like live through like the time period where we went into war and all this different stuff, all the new technology that came into play. And if I was going throughout the 80s, you have like new like the blockbuster movies started to come in. 1978, I think the first Star Wars came out, and then you had like Jaws and Rocky and all these huge like blockbuster type movies. And then going into the 90s, and you had all like the great 90s
Star
movies
Wars in the 80s.
Like like dude, that'd be crazy. Like and to see it as a kid, like with your dad, like and have that recollection and how important it is nowadays. Yeah, like that'd be insane.
We'll be the same years from now too. People will be like,
I
mean, technology is improved so much from that period of time. I think, honestly, it's pretty wild to say, but I feel like it would be interesting. I mean, we are millennials, and there's a lot of people that talk about how the millennials are kind of ruining the country. But that period of time, like kind of fragmenting the 90s, because I love the 90s. I love anything from the 90s.
Yeah,
I love shows. I love the
movies, music,
the look of the 90s, like all of it, like to
the
me,
easygoing feel of it,
like easygoing feel, like the freshness of the feel of the 90s. But like, whenever I think back and see 90s stuff, it puts me in that place whenever I was a little kid. So it's kind of crazy. I feel like if you ask somebody that was older, maybe, it's funny because neither one of us said it'd be cool to be born in like 2000.
Fuck that. No. Yeah, fuck that. I just feel like I don't know.
So, I mean, that'd be pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, it would be crazy.
Because then at the same time, all you would really, that's like you were from the time, I feel like you can start truly generating your own true thoughts as a person, I would say around 10. Like you really are like,
yeah, I would say it's around that time where you start to form not just memories, you start to really recollect what's happening.
Yeah, remember.
Like I could remember back like, oh, like 5 months ago I did this and that caused that and this, you know what I mean? Like you could recollect instead of being like, I remember that Chuck E. Cheese time, and your mom would be like, oh yeah, you don't remember this and this and this? Like fuck no, I was like 7. I don't remember that shit.
Well, and it's interesting too because like I have a little brother that was born in 12. He's 12 years old, but he was born in 2006, and
that's crazy.
Yeah,
wow, that's nuts to think about.
Yeah, he's 12, and he's just like. He's been raised in technology.
Yeah.
And he knows that he can operate and work his way around a computer and a TV and a phone and an iPad and anything that's technologically advanced. So
but the thing is I think with us, even being born in the 90s, we are able to appreciate the technology. Yeah. And I think that's a problem with like being born in like the early 2000s or whatever it would be. It's a standard.
Yeah.
So like watching my dad, my dad was born in 1970. And so I'd be talking like, 7 or 8 years off where my dad was born. Like technology is like, that's his thing. Like if you know my dad, like that's his thing. Like he's just amazed by it. Like he's like, God, I want to get this. We have a 120-inch projector screen. We have like 5 flat screen TVs in our house. We have fucking Alexas in like every single one of our room. Like it's just, he's all about that shit. Like 2 PS4s, like shit's all around it. And he's just amazed by it because he grew up through, Atari and like all that kind of shit.
Like whenever
it's like, and it blows his mind. It's like, holy shit, like I can play a video game with my son. He's down in the basement playing on a projector screen. I'm playing on this flat screen TV, and we're playing together against people in the world. Like,
yeah,
go back to fucking Pong. You know what I mean? It's like, that blows your mind, the advancement of all the technology and things like that, and even like the Alexas and things and all the crazy shit like that nowadays. Like, people from that era, they were raised through the beginning of like new age technology. They were, raised through, TV coming into play and all that kind of stuff, and then having it to where it's come to fruition and we're still growing, it's still evolving, and it's still an ever evolving process. To be born in there, to be able to appreciate what it's come to is it's super important, because you cherish it more.
Right,
you know what I mean?
No, I agree. I think another aspect of wanting to like grow up, I would say born in the 50s and maybe raised in the maybe even earlier than that, because I really want to be like a teenager through the 60s and the 70s.
That'd be cool.
Into your 20s.
Yeah. A lot happening during that time period.
A lot going on in the world, and I think for me a big thing to do for that time period would be live music.
Yeah.
I think live music would be incredible to see.
Yep.
You seeing some of the most amazing artists of our ever.
Yeah.
Like of all time, and at that period of time, and just being like, not knowing until years later, 50 some odd years later,
how important and influential,
how incredible those shows, those Woodstock type shows and all that would be. That'd be pretty wild. Not only that, you got like the Martin Luther King stuff. You could see all that stuff. That stuff be pretty wild, and the beginnings of televisions, and
like living through like JFK being assassinated.
Yeah, JFK.
Like, how fucking crazy would that be, dude? Like, that'd be insane.
Yeah, I mean, and people can say that about some of the stuff that's gone on through.
That's true.
9/11's a one thing, and that's
true.
Pretty crazy. And over from 2000 to now, the last 18 years. I mean,
there's been some nutty shit go down.
Yeah, there's some pretty wild stuff. There's some pretty crazy things happen, and it's blanking on exactly the things.
Like you have all of the different
first black president. That's
true.
That's
Obama.
That's pretty crazy.
You have the stuff that happened with Osama bin Laden, all that kind of stuff, like catching up. I remember that. That was actually during a pay-per-view we were watching, and John Cena. I think John Cena came out. He's like, "We got him."
Yeah.
John Cena did it. He sniped him from fucking Maryland or some shit, or wherever he was at. But I mean, there's been like tons of crazy shit. I mean, you had like Columbine and things like that, in like around 2000 or 99, I think it was. So I mean, tons of huge historical type events and things like that have happened. But I mean, that's the big thing. Is I thought about it. I was like, well, I love music, and a lot of my favorite musical acts, like, bands like Metallica and Pantera, which would be fucking awesome to see, like the 90s, and then growing up and still be able to have the bands that I cherish nowadays, that are like my most important ones, that growing up, through that time period, and be able to see them at an older age, at like the age that these guys were born, at the age of like some of the like the members of the bands that I enjoy the most were born, which it's pretty close to where we are too, but to be able to see that, the different, all the crazy, amazing movies and films and things like that throughout the, from like the 80s until, I guess current time. And then, obviously like television and things like that, that's a huge deal too, coming into fruition and things. But I think that it's really that time period between, I think that the furthest, I don't think I would go back as far as like the 40s or anything like that, but I think definitely going throughout like the 60s and 70s, that was a huge historical time period. I think that's a really cool, interesting time period, and life wasn't like terrible. I mean, I guess considering where you're at in the the totem pole of things, obviously it could be a lot worse for some people, but it's the same period I think going up until you probably had over the last 10 years where it kind of got shitty, like government wise and things like that, where things started to go downhill. But to be able to go through like live out the 90s and things like that, where I mean, life was just awesome to live through. It was just great. You had all this new stuff that was going on with music and television and like everything, like entertainment wise, and just life itself was just so much easier of a living. And I mean, then to kind of come through, obviously you're going into the 2000s and things like that, where things started kind of gotten a little out of hand and shit with when it comes to technology and stuff, but still to be able to cherish the technology and things like that you've come into being, because I guess just when it comes down to it, I would not be able to go without being able to sit down and play a video game or something, you know what I mean? Like, to be able to see through all that stuff and be like, it's hard to not take yourself out of it because
well, yeah, knowing what you know now, that's the hardest
it's
part.
impossible to be like, well, where would I fit in? I've always said that I felt like I was born to be raised throughout the 80s just because I'm not into I'm into technology, but I'm not into like the social media type technology and things like that. I would be more impressed with the like advancements in film and music and like TV and video games and things like that. Sports as well. Sports is a huge thing, so I'd be able to see like a bunch of great athletes come up and stuff like that live, and not have to go back and watch like historical things and stuff like that. So
cup of coffee,
definitely
though. Cup of coffee. Where are you going?
See, I haven't thought about that. Shit.
I also think that it'd be crazy to see
I've always
Egypt as well.
Yeah, I've always
been
been huge into Egypt and things like that. I love that kind of stuff.
1920s Paris. That'd be pretty wild.
That'd be cool. That would be cool. God, I don't know, man. I've always thought the Wild West would be cool.
Yeah, the Wild West.
I think that'd be kind of cool too. To be like just like a hard ass outlaw dude in like the Wild West and like have your own fucking gang and shit. Like that'd be dope. But yeah, I don't know. There's endless amounts of options and things like that are out there that I think would be really really cool. But yeah, that's
a pirate.
Oh damn!
Being a pirate,
dude,
that'd be pretty
that
wild.
would be pretty fucking wild. That would be, dude. That'd be nutty.
Yeah.
Just go back to like the samurai ages and like Japan and shit.
Be a samurai.
Oh my god, what? Nutty would that be? I mean, if you don't die,
being a pirate
being a pirate would be pretty dope. Yeah, and you get to like live in like a really cool area of the world. Like that'd be kind of nutty. I'm really blanking on like things that I would think are like
Viking,
it'd be cool.
Maybe a Viking too.
It'd be cool to like go through, like to be able to go
Game
and
of
like
Thrones time, like medieval times. That'd be pretty crazy.
That'd be nutty. Yeah, that kind of the Viking kind of thing or whatever. Go back to when the Columbus and like America was discovered. Like how nutty would that be?
Or be an
like,
Indian. See what it'd be like to be an Indian.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, there's tons of different options.
Yeah.
I definitely, the one that always comes to my mind, I think Egypt is really cool. I think to be around when the pyramids were formed and like what they were thinking and like how everything. I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories about how the pyramids were even formed to see it take place and how much labor like went into creating some of the most amazing pieces of art and things like that historical wise. Is pretty nutty. But yeah, I mean, just to go back and see what kind of, to come back and be like, hey, this is wrong would be kind of interesting too. Would be like all these people that are like, oh, this is the way it is. This is what I've heard. This is what I've done. It's like, no, that's not actually what happened.
I think the go-to might be if you ask anybody on the street, be like, oh man, I'd like to go back and see if this stuff with Jesus was real.
Right.
That'd be
insane.
That'd be crazy
that'd
to
be
just
insane.
see how that stuff came about.
Yeah.
Just the very beginning of existence.
Yeah, dude.
Just
day one.
Caveman life.
Day one. Yeah, just see what happened. Like if it was just a fucking star exploding or if some shit actually went down. Yeah. And just go back and see if it's just crazy to think about.
I have a theory that a worm weaseled its way up into a monkey's penis and then two monkeys banged and then it just fusioned and then the first human was a monkey and a worm combination.
Jesus, monkworm. The monk. Maybe that's where monk came from. Just
kidding.
That's crazy. There's just a shit ton of different time periods and eras and things like that. That would be really, really cool. But it's hard to find a prolonged place. Like it would just be like a moment in time type of deal where it'd be like, okay, that was cool. Now what? You know what I mean? Like kind of like one of those deals because it's hard to find like an extension of because it's going to be interesting. I mean, we won't be around to see it, but to see the era that we lived in it's going to go down as a historical time period.
Yeah.
That was like so significant for technology and society and the way that people interact with each other.
Yeah.
Because it's the genesis of that time period is what we grew up in.
Right.
We're
living in between the 20th and the 21st century where a lot from the beginning of the 20th century to 2000 obviously that stretch of 100 years a lot of shit happened. Like a lot of shit happened in the world but specifically in America like and I mean all over the world with the Holocaust and different things in different countries and crazy stuff happening to where we're literally at the end of that catching the tail end of the history of all of those things, and now we're in the middle of the beginning of the 21st century, where it's like moving forward into this technological age, where it's where technology is gonna be so prevalent that it's just going to make everyone in the world just lazy.
Yeah.
Like,
and that's why I said I was like, I would not want to be born in like, because you just, like I said, you take things for granted.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying every like kid that was born after 2000 is just like a lazy piece of shit, but it's just one of those things where it's like you just don't. I mean, we can't say much because we were born just 10 years earlier than that. But
10 years?
That's a long period of time.
It is.
And it's also a huge advancement in all that technology and stuff.
Yeah.
You go back to what technology was around in 1990 and what technology was around in like 2005 or whatever, or 2000 or what, I don't know why I picked 15 years, but in that time period and how life was so much different and how things are just taken for granted nowadays instead of how it was then. Is pretty crazy. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see all the advancements and things like that, and even decreasing in some things of how life, has
that 10-year
grown
span, being born in the 90s, either being born in the 90s or being born in the 2000.
Yeah,
that jump is like.
Yeah, I feel like the 90s
crazy.
was like the end of an old school era. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the end, and 2000 brought in, because 2000 the whole thing was like new. And technology and fancy and shiny and everything, and even if it didn't like come off that way, that's what everybody was trying for. Mm-hmm. Everything had to be new and like shiny and new age and all this kind of shit. And like the 90s was it wasn't trying to impress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it seems like the early 2000s and things going forward, it was like we have to impress and awe and do this kind of stuff. Where it was just more chill then. And it was more just kind of a chill vibe. I mean, yes, you had things that came in and new things, but it wasn't like pushed and pressed on as much, I feel, looking back on it and things like that, as much as it was, going from like the 2000s and on from that time period. But yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's pretty crazy stuff. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll never know.
That's true. We will never know.
Russia creates time travel.
Russia. You gotta go. I was gonna go with China.
Russia is savage.
They're gonna create time travel.
Yeah.
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 I feel like we could create time travel. Do you think that is possible? Do you think
we already did.
Time travel is possible, bro?
Yeah.
Here's a question.
We went back in time and made sure that we erased the guy who killed JFK.
There it is. Yeah. Lee Harvey Oswald.
Yeah.
Knowledge drops. Or we could just create the gimmick that we want for Roman Reigns. And he could just go in and shield everything from everything wrong. The one-man human shield. He will block the planes from 9/11. He'll block JFK's bullet.
Oh, God.
He'll block the iceberg from the Titanic.
Oh, that's the one that we
That's
need
the
to be
quintessential
the most.
one. That's the one we need. That was the turning point in society. Is Titanic sinking, bro?
It's real
Sad
life.
fucking day. But here's a question for you, because it's kind of a broad one. Would you, knowing what has happened with history, would you go to the past? Would you stay in the present? Or would you go in the future?
I don't know if I would stay in the present. I feel like everyone talks about always just being in the now and like absorbing everything around you. I think if I had the choice, unknowingly, I would probably go to the future. I don't know. I just have like, I don't know. I have like this affinity for like thinking that like craziness is going to happen in the next 50 years, like in the world. I think at least in the next 20 years, I mean, I don't want to say hopefully, but hopefully in the sense that I want to witness some just crazy things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
mean, and I'm like that too. It's very cynical of us to want to like see crazy shit go down, because everybody would want to be like, wake up, there's no murder, there's no crime, there's none of this kind of shit. Obviously, because we would never have to worry about anything.
Right.
We would never have to wake up and worry. You know, that would be gone. We wouldn't have to worry about loved ones or anything like that. Everything would just be natural the way it would happen. Mm-hmm. But there is a sense of, that's why news goes towards controversy and goes towards, events and drastic, terrible things going on. But yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I feel that it's just going to be a slope that just goes more downhill, I think. And it's sad. You don't want that for the future, and you don't want that for, going forward and bringing in, kids and your loved ones and your family and stuff like that. You don't want that to happen, but you just have to go off of what history you have, and how things have gone over the last, 10 to 15, 20 years or whatever it is. And it just seems like a steady decline.
It'd be pretty interesting to go to, I mean, as long as they're coherent and can really talk to you about stuff, it'd be interesting to go to like a nursing home and talk to somebody that's like 80 or 90 years old.
Yeah.
And like who could really comprehend, what's going on currently and be like, I was born and raised in the beginning of the 19th century and I witnessed and saw all these things happen. Like just the progression of the last 100 years.
Living through that century would be insane.
Yeah.
Like to be able to say that you were born in the early 1900s or however it is and be coherent nowadays or even in the early 2000s and live through that whole entire century, that is a whole lot of shit. That is a whole lot of shit. It's a whole lot of progression, a whole lot of regression in some areas. Like that's a lot. Like that's why I wish like before my grandparents passed and things like that, like my grandpa was born I think in the early 1940s. Yeah, I might be wrong about that, but he's gone through some shit. Like he's like had so many interesting things happen in his life, and to be able to sit down and just kind of like chat with him about like, what were you thinking when this happened, or what was going through your mind when that happened, or when this new thing came in, or you know what I mean? Like that stuff is hella intriguing, and that's why you have ancestors. That's why you have those relatives to go to, and you have it to turn to, I feel
like it was so much more interesting though over the last 100 years because there wasn't the only way to catalog that stuff was to be written in a book.
Yeah.
So now you can just whip out your cell phone and just record anything happening. So if something crazy or wild happens, you're actually gonna see it.
Right.
Like you're gonna see.
Like, could you imagine if JFK happened nowadays with all those people and cell phones around? Like, there would be no mystery about anything.
Yeah, there'd be
slow-mo videos, fucking panoramic.
50, 100. No, that's way too many.
That's not a number.
50, 100. I was gonna say 500, but then I thought that might have been too much. Also, 500 different angles of the shot.
Yeah. I've had a chance to go there. It is amazing. It's so cool. It's such a cool historical thing whenever we went to WrestleMania in Dallas or whatever and get to go there. It's so like, you ever just go to a place and you're like, man, this is historic. Like this is a very historical thing. Like I got to go to like Wrigley Field or whatever in Chicago, and that's been around for like 100 years. Like that's crazy historic. I'd be able to go, like I haven't got the chance to go to like Washington, but I think that'd be really cool to go see all the monuments and things like that. I think you said you've gone to the Grand Canyon, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like be able to see cool shit like that, or just really historical things. But like stepping there and walking around like on the grass and be able to stand and they have an X on the street where he was like shot at or whatever, and be able to stand there, it's like kind of like takes you over. Like it's like, whoa, this is fucking crazy. Like, you know what I mean? Like how historic it is. And what was cool about it is we literally stumbled across the grassy knoll in that area. Like we were going to the NXT show on Saturday night, and we were like, tomorrow we'll have to kind of scout out because we wanted to go to that place. Because as soon as I thought, I was like, wait, we're going to Dallas. That's where JFK was at, so we need to go to that spot. And we literally turned the corner right when we were talking about that and drove up the same fucking road. And I was like, oh, this is nutty. Like, it's just crazy. Like, historical things like that are really cool. It was always one of my favorite subjects in school was history, to be able to see all the things that have happened over time. But to be able to experience stuff like that firsthand, and to be able to talk with people that have experienced it firsthand, like grandparents or whatever it is, it's just crazy to see all the stuff that we live through and how crazy life is and history and all the things like that we've gone through is pretty neat.
We're gonna have, if we live that long, by 2050 or whatever it is, have people asking us, so you guys lived through Donald Trump. You guys lived through Donald Trump's election and all that.
Right, that's true. I mean, that's true.
So,
even like Obama, the first black president, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge historical thing. But yeah, there's tons of things that are. It's an ever revolving thing because we'll be sitting here talking about what our grandparents and parents lived through, and then our grandkids are going to be talking the same thing. Like, oh, Grandpa, you went through that period or whatever with their fucking phone that's already implanted in their face or whatever. Be like, hold on, let me look that up. Yeah. Oh, that was cool.
Yeah, just snap your eyes. Let me just look at it through my contact lenses and my eyeballs, Black Mirror style.
Right. Do Black Mirror, bro. That is the future. That is the future.
It's just giving it up, man.
God, right?
Ready Player One is real life.
That's real fucking life, bro.
It's going to be
shit. All right, well, I guess this will wrap up our edition of the Dead Pulse Theory. If you guys are new to the show, be sure to like and subscribe. We put out new videos every Sunday. We just recently changed the upload date. I always say day, whatever, fuck. Recently changed that up, so... and if you haven't checked out any of our other videos, we have tons on our channel, so go check out all of those. We recently just changed the way that we did some stuff, just keeping it with just one topic per video, so thought it'd be easier for you. Last week we were assuming it would be shorter, but we went hella in depth, and who knows how long this fucking video is. But yeah, so be sure to do that. Yeah, for my partner Jarvis, I am Jman, and we'll see you guys next week.